Hey everyone, you're listening to After the Session. This is episode 2 from season 0. My name is Christian Cummings, and the guest on this episode is mastering engineer Reuben Cohen. Reuben is just a phenomenal mastering engineer. I've been working with him on and off since I think the first thing he mastered for me in 2007. And of course, Lurssen Mastering, where he is employed. Him and Gavin both are very talented mastering engineers, very well known and very talented mastering engineers. They've done tons of work with tons of different people. I think some of the more impressive stuff, in my opinion, from Reuben's discography would be his work with Pharrell on Happy. I think that was for a movie soundtrack. And he did Slumdog Millionaire, him and Gavin. I don't know if he worked with Gavin on that. I'm guessing yes, because I think they work on a lot of stuff together. Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros was a cool one we actually talk about in the podcast. And actually, in the podcast, we talk about that. We talk about his mastering Sonic Highways for the Foo Fighters in the HBO documentary. We talk about his mastering philosophies, his process, and his approach. Right now, I'm sitting here with my buddy Pat. You had something mastered. You did something with Reuben, right?
I did the first Tiny Telephones record with Reuben.
What year was that?
Oh, 2013.
Were you happy?
I was extremely happy. I think the extra special thing was I'd never been into a mastering lab quite like that before, so I really wanted to go in and check out what exactly.
You learned a lot?
Well, I wanted to see what goes into it.
Yeah.
And when I pulled up in my car, they had the reserved for Mr. Heaney. And I was like, this is worth it right away.
Were you like, this is a perfect place for my Toyota Corolla?
And, and then you walk in, you get to see the Hannah Montana platinum records hanging on the wall.
They really have done just about everything, haven't they, at Lurssen? Like, they're insane up there. They've done, God, I don't even know, everything.
A rack of Grammys.
Yeah. Gavin Lurssen, whom is the namesake, he was with Doug Sachs at the mastering lab before Lurssen Mastering. And I think Reuben came over with him we talk about this in the podcast, Reuben came over with him from the mastering lab when they started Lurssen Mastering, and they've been incredibly successful and very forward-thinking, I think, in terms of the industry and where their place is in it and where it's going in the future and where their place will be in it in the future. And they give back a ton to the community. Gavin and Reuben, both Lurssen Mastering, gives a lot back to mastering engineers that want to learn and musicians that want to learn. And so you sat in on a session with Reuben?
Yeah, I was watching Reuben while he's sitting there, mastering. He's just kind of staring off into space, and he's just moving the ins and outs, these two giant knobs. I assume it's their your input and output. And he's during certain parts of the song, because they're very dynamic, he's just pushing it, and it's just all about feel.
Was it something
not looking at anything? And
was it something you sang on? Was it a song you sang on at all, or no?
No. Nobody wants to hear my fat nasally voice.
Welcome to After the Session with the two most nasal voices you've ever heard. My name is Christian, and this is Pat.
There's two noses. Yeah, it definitely is worth. I'm sure they don't get terribly stoked on having the client there always, but it is worth going up there and checking out. If you are going to get it mastered, it's very interesting to watch these professionals work.
Right.
It's something that they've been doing for so long. Mm-hmm. And people always ask, being an engineer, ask, can you master my record too? And you're like, that's a whole other beast.
Yeah, absolutely. And you experienced a professional mastering engineer like Reuben, and how active he actually was in the process of doing it. Like the lights turned way down, listening to the music and actually riding gains and riding EQs and it's doing this really organic thing to your music. It's not just slapping a limiter plug-in on the end.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, it's
years and his time and a decade of practicing.
The crazy thing that he can know exactly what frequencies should be where and
right.
How to get it to sound really round and full. And,
mm-hmm.
When it came back, it was just so wide open mm-hmm. and pretty.
Sounds like a finished record.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so you should go. If Reuben's mastering your stuff, definitely go. Bring a bunch of bubble gum. Sit behind right by
jaws.
His right ear.
Or
some bubble wrap is good to bring. Popping bubble wrap.
Stop putting the L3 on your master fader and go get it mastered for real.
And with that, a couple things I'd like to say real quick. The podcast is obviously free. This is just a passion project of mine, but I'd appreciate it if you guys would subscribe in iTunes, if that's how you're listening here. If you are listening to this on the web and you want to try to find it, just get yourself into iTunes on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, and do a search for After the Session. And then, click subscribe. If you need to get in touch with me, you can do that on Twitter. Ears Cummings is my Twitter handle. You can reach me at afterthesession@gmail.com. And also you can catch podcasts there at christiancummings.com, which is my website. So with that, enjoy After the Session, Season 0, Episode 2 with mastering engineer Reuben Cohen.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because forever in always you got my love to lean on, darling. All the days forever. Come from what's come before, so here I go.
Sure. So, Reuben Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you for being on the podcast. We're at Lurssen Mastering right now. Fredo's with us again. He was helping me with Mark Needham yesterday, and you're hanging over here without a mic. But if you want to say something, just yell really loud. And
Sure will.
I'll turn up the gain in that spot or something. So, Reuben, thank you for having us. Thanks for being on the podcast. How long have you been mastering for?
Coming on about 10 years now.
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years. I started really young.
I guess so, because you seem like a pretty young dude.
I started as a teenager. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Are you from the Los Angeles area? Or
No, Santa Barbara.
Santa
Yeah,
Barbara.
But
okay.
I moved to Hollywood when I was 18.
To do music, or?
Yeah, to either become a producer, work on records, play, just wanted to be in music.
Are you a musician?
Yeah, guitar player.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's kind of the genesis of you getting
It was,
to hear.
yeah. And I was recording in Santa Barbara just my own stuff and friends and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not professionally, just for free, just because I love to do it. And then just found my way into mastering fairly quickly within a year of moving here, I'd say. Yeah, at the mastering lab on Hollywood Boulevard at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's where the first gig was.
Right on.
Yeah.
Doug Sachs.
That's right, yeah.
He just passed away.
Yes.
Sadly. So you got an assistant gig there quickly, and then Gavin was there, right?
That's right. That's where I met Gavin. At the time, I wasn't even assisting, really. I was picking up sandwiches and making sure the bathroom looked good and making sure clients had coffee.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we were there for a little over a year, and then we started this place, Lurssen Mastering.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And, Romaine
Rest
and
is
Hudson.
history.
That's right, yeah.
So right out of the gate, I have to ask you
Sure.
about two things.
Okay.
Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s, so it's
Okay.
kind of hard. And I'm a drummer.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s and I'm a drummer, so it's kind of hard to not,
Yeah.
at least respect Dave Grohl.
Uh-huh.
And of course the other guys too. So you recently worked on Sonic Highways?
Yes.
What was
yeah.
your role on that project?
Gavin and we tag team a lot of projects, so we worked on that one together. And it was 4 days straight, quick in and out. They had a deadline. Dave was in town for the whole thing, and actually the whole band showed up.
Really?
And we worked long hours because we were picking, which mixes to use and things like that. And James Brown was mixing some of the songs as we were mastering it, so there was a little bit of back and
Oh,
forth.
wow. So he's like up at the other studio. Where did he mix at? Do you know?
I think he was on the East Coast, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So he'd
yeah,
mix, boom, fly it over to you
That's
guys.
right. Yeah, all FTP.
Yeah.
It's quick,
Yeah.
So, that's basically how
Wow,
it went down.
that scares me as a mixing engineer, like in that role of having to like send off to mastering as I'm wrapping mixes and not
Yeah.
getting to live with them or anything, just being like psh, out the door.
Yeah, well, I think, we were just kind of going off what felt right. And
Yeah.
Dave really knows what he wants.
Really?
He really does. He's really zoned in. He's one of the most focused artists I've ever come across, actually. He's
Really?
just this force, yeah. So he has tons of energy, but it's super focused energy when he's working.
Uh-huh.
But he also lets, the people around him do what they do best. And he kind of trusts his professionals that he he has surrounding
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah.
he'd kind of come in almost like a quarterback, tell us the game plan for each song, and then he'd be out until we had something for him to listen to. And then
Do you
he'd come
find
back.
that having someone that really knows what they want is helpful most of the time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus like someone who's like, I don't really know what I want.
Well, it's
Kind of here's some things. I like the Beatles and I like Metallica. Can you make it sound like both of those?
Yeah, well, a whole lot of mastering, a big part of mastering is getting into an artist or a producer's head and figuring
Yeah.
out what they're actually saying. And sometimes what they're actually verbally saying couldn't be farther from what they actually do want. So it's such a completely misunderstood process, to most,
Okay.
that they don't even know what to ask for. So usually you're kind of going off, you have to develop a sixth sense to kind of get into somebody's head and figure out what is really going to make them happy.
Right.
And for the most part, the mix really does the most talking than anything else. Even if a mixing engineer brings a project in and they try to describe the mix,
Yeah.
they can describe it all day long. You're going to have an idea of what it's going to be like and what it needs maybe to take it to the finish line. But once you actually hear it, that does all the speaking for you, really.
Gotcha.
For them. And then from there, you work from that place.
Yeah, I do. As you probably know, I do a little mixing myself.
Sure, of course.
And engineering and producing. And I never really know what to say to a mastering engineer about my project when I deliver it. Like, I usually am like, I want to tell them about all the problems I already know about.
Right.
But then at the same time, I kind of think to myself, you know what? I don't want to tell them about any of my preconceived notions. I just want to give it to them and have them just listen and go. Because
Sure.
ultimately, their first instinct is probably better left unpolluted by my thoughts.
Yeah. Sometimes, what I like is when some people email me the notes or it's something that they're concerned about, and then I have that there, and then I'll do something I'll have it up on the board. Maybe I'll even make a print, and then I'll look at the notes after that to see if maybe I, addressed everything that they.
That's
already,
interesting.
It's a cool way to do it, and then I'll listen through their ears, through their, after reading their email, and then maybe I'll make another adjustment or print another version as an option or something.
I bet
like
you
that.
find that a lot of times when you do that, you've already addressed a bunch of their problems.
Usually, yeah. Because, for the most part, balanced audio is balanced audio. And if there's a disconnect, thankfully, it's a great thing that we all kind of agree most of the time, on things. The snare is fighting with the vocal. We're all going to kind of feel that. We might, that just will happen naturally, something like that.
Is that a common one you run into? Snare fighting with the vocal? Obviously,
man, I
bottom
don't know
end's
if
going to
there's
be a big one.
Yeah, bottom end is probably the biggest one that I run into, just because, people are mixing in less preferred environments more and more.
Right.
They're mixing at home. They're making decisions based off what they're hearing, but sometimes what they're hearing is steering them wrong.
Right.
So standing wave issues, that's a big thing that we run into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've got dudes that are mixing at home and they've got a big 200 hertz null or bump.
Right.
And they don't know it.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden you're getting a...
Yeah, it happens. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen.
Would you say that the quality of the mixes you receive is all over the board, or do you feel like it's kind of in a certain ballpark?
Not one project is the same. Every project is its own signature thumbprint. You'll never come across a song that's in the same place or an album that's in the same place. So in terms of like what it comes down to is, how do you really define what's good? It really, do you connect with the music or not?
How do you define what's good?
That's it.
Do you connect with the music
it?
or not? Yeah.
Exactly. Does the artist speak? Does it have some type of emotional connection? Because that's really what it is, right?
Right.
So if that's done right, there's nothing in between that connection, right? Even if there's, we do, every genre. So if you're, talking about working on something that's like really highly processed, like a highly processed hip hop album or pop record or something
EDM
like that.
track,
EDM
maybe.
track, something that's really gone in there, not like, acoustic guitar and vocal. I'm talking about something that's really processed. The processing helps deliver that emotional content, right?
Right.
So it doesn't mean that, you can do, it doesn't mean that you have to not do a whole lot to get that across. Some people say purist, methods will deliver it most in the best way, but it's whatever you're working on, regardless of genre.
Right, and what is the purist kind of approach? I mean, I've got a feeling you're more of just like not the purist approach. You're more of like does this need nothing or does it need a bunch? And I'll do whichever kind of needs it needs.
Well,
you kind of like, you know what I'm saying?
I'm everything, because I mean, I've had the honor and blessing of, standing on the shoulders of giants, because everything that Doug that passed to Gavin, that Gavin passed to me, Gavin, when I was young, he always used to tell people that he was a blend of old school and new school, because he was new school. He was of, the modern times.
Right.
Still to today, he's, cutting edge mastering engineer. But he was able to pull upon all of the tried and true methods of Doug, who had been working on mastering when mastering was as a mastering engineer, when mastering was a completely different thing.
Yeah. Should we take a second and just talk about Doug?
Sure.
Doug Sachs.
Yeah.
So I never met him. I never worked with him.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to chat with him or get to know him at all?
Very little, actually.
Yeah.
Most of what I know about Doug is through Gavin. He had built the studio in Ojai. And by the time I was at the lab in the Hollywood location, he was pretty much at the Ojai location every day.
Yeah.
And Gavin had pretty much taken over, the day-to-day of that place at the Hollywood location. So
gotcha.
He'd drop in now and again and crack some jokes and
make sure the machine was running correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's cool that everybody has such fond memories of the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously he had such a massive impact on your industry.
Absolutely. I mean, we wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for him. There's no question.
Right. So back to the Foos. The Foos were cool.
Sure.
You did the Sonic Highways thing.
Yeah. Today we're working on the Foo Fighters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're remastering.
Cool.
We're remastering 4 albums. The 4 albums before Sonic Highways.
Okay.
All from the original analog tapes to 192. All high res.
Okay.
Yep. So they're fresh high res releases. So today we're working on In Your Honor.
Oh,
yeah.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan.
Right on.
I ran into those guys. I was doing stage work back in the day, and like right during the Color and the Shape, when I was like a wee lass, I ended up drum teching that for them at a show, and it was just the coolest experience.
Nice.
I was like blown away, a little kid just being like, "Oh my god, so rockstar," and they were so nice. So.
Yeah, they're all so great. Great energy.
What did you do for Sonic Highways? Are they still really into that analog processing, or were they kind of like just whatever it needs?
It's whatever it needs.
Yeah.
It's whatever the song in the album needs.
Okay.
Each song was different. That was an interesting record because every song was recorded in a different city, in a different studio. So, James Brown, who mixed it, he had to anticipate it all living together as one thing also, but at the same time, being able to have its own, each song being its own thing at the same time too.
Yeah.
So we had to take all of that into account when mastering it, and then find a place for it all to live so it can be like one thing.
Yeah, right. They're at Albini's place. I mean, I watched the whole series. They're
Sure.
at Albini's place on tape, and then whatever weeks later, they were probably all in Pro Tools doing it that way, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a cool record, man.
Yeah.
It sounded great.
Yeah, it's fun. Really
Sounded
fun.
really great. So we're sitting here at Lurssen Mastering. What studio is this?
We don't even have like a Studio A and Studio B. We just call it, this room or that room, because we don't want to say one's, the preferred room necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
Because do you have pretty much the same gear in both rooms?
We have 2 clone consoles.
So this is exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
And I see a lot of really cool toys in here, man.
Yeah.
Certainly lots and lots of analog stuff.
Well, we would process all analog.
Okay.
We do a little bit of brick wall limiting post the conversion back to digital. Just due to the fact that we like that, so we don't have to hit the converter on the back end is hard.
Right.
It creates kind of a nice cushion. And depending on what you're working on, we'll configure the gain structure accordingly.
Right.
But all of the EQ, all of the compression, all of the, shaping the actual audio is done analog.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you do any like MS, or do you guys get into that kind of stuff, or do you kind of do a little bit of everything, or
we do it all. MS is something, in my opinion, and I speak for all of us here probably at the studio. It's kind of something that generally is done when something's wrong with the mix.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it will sound kind of processed.
Yeah.
And the best thing that we can do is sound like we weren't in there fixing
Doing
anything,
right.
or over processing anything in the wrong way. Right. Sometimes processing is good because it actually sounds less processed once you process.
Yeah, right.
But
wow, that was also very like
it's a tongue
Inception-esque.
But
it's a dream within a dream.
That's right. That's how deep can you go?
Yeah, right.
We can get pretty esoteric here if you want.
We like to go into digital so it sounds extra analog. Wait, what? It's so confusing.
We're backwards and we're there and back again. We sometimes will do something like, I'd say, well, the majority of the stuff that comes in is digital, although we still work on a whole lot of analog stuff, from analog tape, like today. Most of the stuff we do is digital.
Well, I would imagine so, because most of the stuff that exists in the world that people are doing is digital.
That's right. So
how many people do analog? I mean, if I would love to do, I love doing analog when I can, but it's just not an option very much.
Yeah. So because of that, a lot of people look to us to take away the digital feel of something and maintain everything else. So, we have techniques of using high frequency limiting to take off some digital edge, but then opening something up with 2BQ as we're doing that. So it's all, it's always all one process.
Right.
So there's different ways to make it almost feel like it came off analog tape through running through our chain, depending on how we have it configured and the gain structure and all that.
Do you kind of move your chain around a lot, or does it kind of, do you generally stay kind of in a certain order?
The way it's, there are formulas based off how the mix feels, and the balance of the mix, and the elements within the mix and how far away they are or how close they are together. The arrangement itself. If I'm working on hip hop or EDM or pop, I might do something where I'm not hearing as much movement in compression. Right. It depends on how hard things are hitting, like in the transients. Right. But if I'm working on a more Americana type of arrangement, sometimes getting some movement is kind of it adds to the feel, and it seems right for the track, right, or the album.
Right. Are there any pieces of gear here that are like desert island gear? Would you say?
Oh,
do you have any desert island?
Man,
kind of
people
things?
ask me that kind of thing, like, what's your favorite piece of gear? What would you,
Yeah, and I'm
if there was a
that
fire,
guy
what
too.
would you run out with?
It's just the whole console up on the
that's
shoulders.
the thing. It's
or
all
like
one,
these ATCs. Are those ATCs?
They are. Yeah, these are the 50s in this room. Probably the speakers, actually.
Yeah,
because that's the most important thing,
ATCs at Mark's place yesterday.
But I wouldn't even go so far as to say it's one thing, really, because I would say it's everything, because it's the way we work is it's almost like one big piece of gear. We have all these individual pieces of gear that make up one process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like, oh, see our console here. This is one big channel strip, in a way.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's a designed, unit.
Yeah. I see a lot of the standard pieces, the normal weapons of choice.
Yep.
And a couple of things like this EARE EQ.
I love that EARE EQ.
Yeah.
You can play that like an instrument. You can ride it. It's not detinted, and it's a very musical EQ. In the way that the bands are set, it's very flexible. You can do all kinds of things, but it feels really nice and analog. Due to the fact that you actually, when you work on it, you can develop this technique with your fingers to ride things on each channel. Like, for instance, if you want to crack open a chorus, you can do it fluidly with
that is so cool, man.
It's like playing guitar. It's like you just learn how to do it.
You're actually occasionally maybe doing rides on an EQ?
Always.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's
my
cool,
hands
man.
are always on the board. It's the way I was trained. Gavin does the same thing. It's the way we work. It's not that we're always needing to change things, but our hands are always on the board, whether we're touching it and making adjustments or not. It's like, when you're playing, I'm not sure, I play guitar.
Yeah.
If you ever just have your hands on the guitar neck, it connects the brain in a certain way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden you're zoned into the instrument.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing. It's like we kind of use our hands to feel into the music that way.
Right.
But you're right there ready. As soon as something happens, you react. If a chorus happens and all of a sudden you hear the compression beginning to maybe there are like a build-up's happening, and the compression is starting to fold in a little bit, or it's going to. Yeah. You might crack it open with the EQ to compensate for that. So it's compressing yet opening at the same time and creating this huge, massive build.
Wow, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
I love the concept of being connected to what you're doing, kind of that tactile connection with your fingers, of just being really looping back into the music. It's like you're playing an instrument. Exactly.
You're in the zone.
Yeah.
You're connected to it. You're in the audio bubble, I like to say.
Yeah. That's an important concept, man. Really important concept. I'm a fan of like minimizing Pro Tools sometimes. I have a control surface in front of me, but it's just trying not to look at stuff and getting too sucked into the visuals of when I'm working, or really just trying to even shut my eyes and just pay attention to what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, anybody that's been to our spot, they'll know that we work pretty much in the dark.
Yeah, yeah.
We literally turn the lights down almost that you can't even see the knobs. And,
that's cool.
And you can see it because your eyes adjust, but any darker you might not,
Yeah.
So it allows your ears to kind of open up in a different way, and also it kind of decreases the stimulus of what's coming in through the eyes. You know what I mean? So your ears kind of are more alert.
Oh, that's cool. That's an interesting concept.
I mean, I think that's how it works.
Kind of,
that's been my own personal experience.
Chilling out the external stimulus and just really letting the ears kind of.
Well, when you're driving and you're looking for the address and you turn down the radio because you're trying to focus.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of that.
Man, that's a pretty cool thought. Yeah. I'm looking at the console. I'm trying to think if I have any more gear questions. I'm guessing these big knobs here in the center of this cool console are volume control?
Well, there's left and right attenuators.
Okay.
And that is also used, well, it's part of the gain structure, but it's also used to, it's actually has so many purposes. One is so we can add some resistance in certain places in the chain, or in one particular place in the chain. So we might, push a little more gain into something, like a tube EQ. Saturate it with more tube saturation.
Gotcha.
And attenuate post it, So you get a little pocket of tube saturation, like little tube.
Yeah.
Warmth. Yeah, analog love.
Yeah.
And the big one to the right of that is the volume control.
Ah, gotcha.
But it's good to have attenuators in the chain. If you're lining up something, lining up a tape machine and you're using the meters, you might want to, you're putting up a tone. You can add attenuation to line it up and see where you are. Get more gain and stuff.
Definitely.
All relative level.
Are the VUs in operation currently? Or?
Sure, absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow, this is such a beautiful console here, a beautiful desk. The monitors are insane.
Yeah.
Those things are nuts, man.
Yeah, we have the 50.
I have no idea how much those things cost.
They're
pretty
not
big
cheap,
investment.
But it's we know them, and these are the 50s. We have the 150s in the other room. It just tells us what to do, And I think if you know any speaker, you can work on anything. It just tells you what to do.
Do you guys run a sub or no?
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We run a sub.
You have any Fredo over here? You're kind of a gear guy. I mean, you work at Desk Doctors. Do you have any gear thoughts, questions?
I'm interested in the XLR patch bay. Actually, I was looking at that a second ago because I've read before that the XLR patch bays actually sound better than the TRS ones. Is that something you guys found? Obviously,
well,
me and you.
That goes back way before me, and we've always done it. I don't want to. There's some things that probably should be left unspoken about, but it's kind of part of the way we've always done things. It's kind of passed down through, how Gavin was. It's an evolution. This console has evolved, from everything that has been passed down over years and years and years.
Yeah.
But
leave it to Fredo to get the question out that goes, let's talk about something else. Back to the artists. You also worked with Pharrell, right?
Yeah.
What did you do there?
Well, we did a couple singles.
I mean, you've done a lot of things, obviously. I'm just kind of cherry picking a couple here.
We did the Blurred Lines single.
Okay.
Here, that Tony Maserati mixed. And we did Happy. And what else have we done?
Isn't there a lot of dynamic range in Happy?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah.
There is?
Yeah. Well, it was originally mastered to live with score music for the Despicable Me 2 soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
So, it has dynamic range due to the fact that it feels good that way too, just due to the arrangement. And it's not slammed with level just because it wanted to be light on its feet and not feeling pushed and hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it needs to just jump and feel happy.
Right. Not terribly aggressive, more.
Yeah. You just want to jump out of your chair and start dancing. You know what I mean? That's the whole idea.
And that song was a huge, huge hit.
Yeah, the music video really went viral.
I have to ask, and I'm sure you're sick to death of talking about it, but dynamic range. Yeah. Let's just talk about it for a split second.
No,
you don't like dynamic ranging, and I have this converation 3 times a day.
Not at all. No. I mean, it should be talked about.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about? I even hate saying the term loudness wars, but how do you feel about the state of dynamic range in your masters these days?
This is the thing. It's always based off how the mix is mixed and how the album is mixed.
Okay.
it's never a good idea to try to make something that it's not, or it doesn't want to be. You can get down to the nitty gritty and start thinking about peak to average ratio of a mix, right?
Okay, yeah.
And understand it from that perspective. But you can also understand it from a field perspective. And it's almost like you want to understand the technical to know it and then put it in your back pocket and then pull it out when you need it. But after that, go off, how does it sound? Because like I was saying earlier, every mix is different. Every project is different. There's not one that's the same. You can't master one record the same as the other. You can come up with, I suppose if you had, a formula in place, you could rely on that, if there's a band that's playing, maybe the Tonight Show band has, something going on where they're same musicians, same instruments, mic the same way every day. Yeah, you might master it every time the same way, something like that.
Right.
But other than something like that, everything's always different. There's not one project the same. So you have to size up each one as its own thing and figure out what the proper level is.
Right.
And even there's a window. You can master it for a little bit. You can hype it more. And that'll create a certain feel. And then you can bring it back a little bit more, and that'll create a certain feel. If you bring it back too much, it could feel disconnected based off how it's mixed. Maybe it does need a little bit more glue and hype based off what the genre is, what the intent of the music is. If it's I don't know, like more aggressive, like it's Foo Fighters record, it's got to, people are going to be driving down the freeway with the windows down, rocking out.
Listening loud,
or
and they want it to be aggressive and exciting. Yeah.
Or hopefully, actually, if you want to listen properly, not with the windows down, but you know what I'm saying? It's supposed to rock your socks off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're working
man, listening with the windows down and enjoying and rocking out might be the proper way to listen to something,
That's
too.
right. So it's got to make sure
because that's the emotional thing there.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's the feel of it.
Yeah.
It's Foo Fighters. It's all everything that it needs to be.
Yeah.
So you want to hype it because the music calls for it. Now, if you put it up against something that's mixed, with more compression on the drums, the guitars are maybe, mixed in such a way that, you can push more level and then it doesn't feel like it's compromising the music.
Right.
And it doesn't also feel like it's pushed onto the listener. So you feel like, oh, whoa, this is too much. I got to start turning it down, because that's the worst thing that could ever happen.
Yeah.
You don't want a loud record that people are going to turn down. You want people to turn it up.
Yeah, right. It seems to me that there's been at least a few more releases within the last couple of years that have been very successful.
Yeah.
Very successful.
Yeah.
With some dynamic range in them. And I find that to be kind of cool. I like that. I like dynamic range. I like, I'm cool. I like a record slammed every once in a while if it's appropriate. But, my stuff, I tend to like a little more dynamic range, or at least, not have it totally crushed when I can get away with that. And it makes me feel like I'm starting to feel like I can get away with that again.
Yeah.
As a mixer or a producer, like I can get away with a 3 more dB of RMS than I had, a couple years ago. So
it's the song at the end of the day, and it's the feel of it, and level, actually, overall level. I mean,
there's styles though too that exist. Like obviously crushing something is a style also as well that has been popular.
Sure, it has a feel. It's part of it. I was kind of born into the level wars. Being 10 years in. So I think it had, probably around 2008 or 9, it kind of was reaching most of its awareness, and it was kind of peaking up. People were starting to say, hey, some of these records don't sound so good.
Yeah.
More than ever before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a whole lot of awareness was raised, and, I won't go into particular projects, but there was a whole bunch of videos that went around, and a whole lot of information was spread.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. It really started with mastering houses competing against one another, because on the immediate listen, louder is better, right? To the unsophisticated ear or uneducated ear, that's what I should say.
Right.
To people that don't know any better, if you do an A/B, if I were to play, my aunt, in the studio, I said, listen to this, and then listen to this. She might go, oh yeah, that sounds better, right?
Right.
But maybe she'd end up turning it down after listening to it for 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Or less, like 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Starts turning into white noise.
Exactly. And maybe she just wouldn't feel as connected to the music, you know? That's how we've always approached. That's the way I was trained. That's Gavin never bought into the level wars. He, that being said, he makes aggressive sounding records all the time.
Yeah, and then you're also responsible for delivering what the client wants, right? So like, if the clients want something loud, and you can say, hey, we could do it quieter, but if you want it loud, here's loud, you know?
Well, we're able to still achieve a lot of level without going to the place where it feels overly done, you know? Because there's a particular place where if you cross it, and we're talking even like a tenth of a dB, at that point, we can narrow into that, where you're over that line. It all of a sudden you lose the connectivity.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you know, so you take it to that place. If you're really trying to figure out, okay, where can we get this or it's hyped, you take it to that place. It takes a matter of seconds. You know it as soon as you put it up that loud, and you back it off a little bit.
Right.
And then you it's like focusing. It's like focusing like a magnifying glass. You know what I mean? It's like you tilt it this way, all of a sudden you're right there, right on the point.
Yeah.
You know? It's like that's exactly the way to describe it. You just know. And you develop that sensibility over doing, you know, thousands of records.
How many records do you do here a year? You guys. Let's just say you guys, because you're a team effort.
It's hard to say.
If you had to guess.
I'd say maybe...
Because
consider we're doing a couple records, albums a day every day.
And sometimes you're doing singles. And
we're doing singles, and we're doing EPs.
Soundtracks.
We're doing soundtracks. And so it's hard
taking
to
all
say,
of that
but
into
I don't
account,
know, maybe,
and you can be...
I'd say maybe, well, to give you an idea, we're doing about 2 to 3 albums a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got 2 rooms.
So 700, 800 albums a year.
Something like that.
Projects.
Yeah.
Something,
and like
whatever.
you said, a lot of them are like we'll do, an average day is we'll do an album and then we'll do an EP and then some singles or something like that. You know?
Wow. How do people, if people want you guys to master for them, they can just go to your website or call you guys, right? There's no...
Yeah.
It's not difficult to do.
Super easy.
Yeah.
Nikki, our manager, is amazing.
She's awesome.
Everybody, just raves about her every time they're in.
She was super good at corresponding with me about setting this up. She was great.
Oh, yeah.
She was on it.
That's her whole thing.
Yeah.
She's so good at that. Yeah. She juggles the schedule. She makes sure that, everything is, a whole lot of, keeping on a heavy workload is making sure that you're able to do it.
Right.
And not, spread yourself too thin. So she's aware of that. She always makes sure that everybody gets everything on time and on budget, and just make sure that we're ready to go every day. Nothing, no holdups.
Off the top of your head, not your. I'm not going to say favorite projects, but are there some projects that you could think of off the top of your head that have maybe not been popular or other people have heard of? Smaller projects that have. Or passion projects that you've gone through over the years that you can kind of remember that you might like to share with people, to check out, or just whatever. I mean, I obviously there's the bullet points that I know of in your resume.
Yeah,
we're talking about the Foo Fighters, we're talking about Pharrell, but are there any little things that were fun along the way that you can think of? A lot of my favorite mixes and mix projects are bands nobody's ever heard of.
I know what you mean. In fact, didn't we once work on something?
We did.
What was that? That was so cool. That was
First Wave Hello, and that was a while ago.
That was like in 2007 or something like that.
Yeah, that was First Wave Hello.
So there's things like that. And it's funny because we actually labeled the project your name because for whatever reason we didn't even have the band name at that time. Maybe there wasn't even a band name at that time.
No, there was. I think, I don't know why that happened.
That was cool.
Yeah. That was their third and final recording project, and then they all went on to do some really cool stuff after that too, in different projects.
There's a whole lot of records that did get some marketing and people do know about them, but not everybody. One of my favorite immediately comes to mind is that there's this album, artist named Rocco DeLuca, and the album's called Mercy. And it was a Daniel Lanois production. Okay, it's so cool. Awesome. Just the arrangement, the vibe. It's just rad.
I'm gonna have to look on Spotify for that.
Really cool. There's a band called Carney. There's a 4-piece band. 2 of the members are brothers. The lead singer, Reeve Carney, and his brother Zane Carney. Is this amazing virtuoso,
are they
jazz fusion
how long
guitar
ago
player.
was this?
They were, I want to say, probably like 2008 or 2009. They were still as Carney. Yeah. And then Reeve got the gig to be Spider-Man on Broadway. Oh. So he was that a guy.
Poor guy.
I know. But the band, they only put out one release. I think it's just.
Is he alive, by the way?
He's
broken bones or like
I know.
spines.
It was too bad.
A lot of people got it. I'm trying to remember, but there was some injuries.
Yeah, somebody fell off. Swinging with some spider webs and all that. Unfortunately,
I shouldn't laugh at that because I don't know what the heck happened there. But it could be a really sad story. I don't actually know.
Killer album.
Disclaimer.
And I mean, so much. If you put it on, it's like undeniable.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna look that one up now too.
Yeah, it's off the top of my head.
I mean, here's what'll happen. As soon as we're done podcasting in an hour, you'll be like, oh, I forgot about this one, and I forgot about this one.
Yeah. It's, and this is not an unpopular album, but just they have such a niche following. It's Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros.
Yeah.
So not everybody knows about them, but everybody should.
Yeah, they're really cool.
So cool.
I don't know a lot about them, but I definitely know at least a few of the tunes. Of course.
And everybody knows them. They had a huge single home.
Yeah.
There's this album called Here, and it's so off the beaten track, but it's so cool at the same time. It's very conservative and level. It's one of the quietest records. It's like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a very quiet record.
Which is a record you guys did.
Yes.
Right.
And we actually remastered it. Well, Gavin did it originally, 2001, I believe.
And he won
He was the first mastering engineer to win an Album of the Year Grammy.
Okay.
Because that was the year that they began including mastering engineers in the category of Album of the Year.
Oh, okay.
Here is intentionally backed off and level for that, for the reason of maintaining all the dynamic builds that it has.
Right.
And it also has a gentle quality to it too.
Mm-hmm.
And the only compressor in the mastering chain was a Fairchild 670. And also it's like
I've
kind
heard
of
of those.
swimming in Fairchild.
Okay.
It's cool. It's really cool. It has this kind of Fairchild.
Do you guys
feel.
own a Fairchild?
Or
do you rent one? Or
we
borrow
have one on almost a regular lease from, and for that reason, it's serviced for us.
Okay.
We know it. It's always here. It can be here within an hour. There's actually 3 that we have kind of
from the same place.
to the same place.
I know where that place is.
Yeah, Design Effects. They're awesome.
Yeah.
So Design Effects plug.
Yeah, Design Effects plug. I've rented their 251s many times, and some pull text from them every once in a while.
Yeah. It's actually better for us to have it because it's serviced and it's,
it's like in perfect condition.
It's always.
You basically end up with a Fairchild that's going to be in as
That's
good
right.
a condition as you can come across.
We don't use it on everything. We use it on certain projects, kind of call for it, just due to the way that, a lot of times we'll use a Manley variable MU, which is also a
Did you just call it a variable MU?
Yeah, a varimu?
Yeah.
Yeah, I call that, I guess.
That's cool. I like it.
Variable MU.
I'm going to start calling it
a varimu.
That. Yeah.
People call it that. Yeah. I don't know. I always call it that.
Variable MU. Yeah, sure. Why not?
So you're the first person to point that out, which is modeled after the 670.
You should call it the variable emu. Or the emu.
The emu. Yeah. It's called the moo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we use that as kind of a different type of sort of Fairchild feel. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? More regularly. We use the Fairchild, I'd say, maybe on one project every other week, or maybe every week or something like that.
I have only had two occasions where I've gotten an opportunity to audition a real Fairchild in the process of making a recording, and both times I didn't end up using it.
Yeah.
Not because it's not a cool piece of gear. I'm not saying that. It's just, I think in reality, you got to have a good one. How's that? Yeah.
There's that. They all sound a little different. And it's sometimes the kind of thing where it does something, so you almost have to audition it. You know, like I'll do a shootout on some records. When I'm thinking about reaching for it, I'll do a shootout against a Manley, and I'll switch them out, and I'll just see how they feel.
I'm guessing it's kind of a bold flavor too.
It has a color that we all know. And I like to use it on more delicate arrangements. Like I love using it on acoustic guitar and vocal albums. You know what I mean? Or something just light, something delicate.
Yeah. I bet you it's one of those pieces you could almost not see the needle moving. And,
oh, yeah. No,
you're just happy with it.
Exactly. It's just tickling. It's just running through it. And although that Edward Sharpe record, it's moving a little more, because it's the only one in there.
Now I have to look that record up, man.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's the singer in that band? Was he in a few other things before that?
Yeah, Alex Ebert.
Yeah.
He's a very cool artist.
Cool.
Like I was really excited once we started that record. I kind of looked him up and saw what he was all about, because
you became a fan.
Yeah, I definitely did. He was in this band called I'm a Robot.
Yes,
and
they were cool, man.
And
I liked that band a lot.
And I only realized that I had seen them at I think it was a Warped Tour show years and years back. And then I only put it together later, because now, then he had long hair and a beard and almost completely different looked totally different. You wouldn't be able to recognize him necessarily unless you knew it was him.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm looking at your credit list here, and I forgot about all the soundtracks you've worked on.
Yeah.
Slumdog Millionaire. That has to be one of the bigger ones, right?
Yeah, that was.
I mean,
like,
obviously, except for I'm seeing Despicable Me on here, and Cars 2, and Across the Universe, and Bridesmaids. So, amongst others. So,
Slumdog was so cool because that was, I think it was 2008 maybe or 9. But anyway, Interscope called and they said, hey, we got this film. It's this India thing. And it's just blowing up at the Toronto Film Festival. We have to get this soundtrack out because it's going to have a theatrical release like tomorrow or something crazy like that. So we were, we said, okay, we'll do it. And it meant staying up late and waiting for the mixes to trickle in from India.
Yeah.
And at the time, Facebook was just kind of happening, it was so hard to get a good phone connection with these guys in India. So we didn't know when it was showing up. I ended up staying up all through the night, waiting for like the last mix. Finally, I went home at like 6 a.m.
Were they coming in via like FTP or something like that?
Yeah. And it was, FTP wasn't even as, this was like you send it, which is now Hightail. It was, I think we called it Swap Drive at the time. Yeah. It was like, it would always fail halfway through and, you wanted to make sure that there was no MD5 checksum, protocol set up at that point. It was it was a time where, and it wasn't even that long ago, but our tape library was filled with hard drives and data DVDs still. Yeah. It's like nobody sends in data DVDs anymore.
DVDs, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
data CDs.
It kind of was like this Slumdog Millionaire actual type story that it's like kind of just happened at the very last moment that we got this thing done in time for the deadline, but just because they were mixing up until the last point. But then, I hadn't seen the movie as we were working on it.
Have you seen it now?
Yeah, it's great.
I just had to ask.
Oh yeah,
I didn't think you were going to say, no, I should do that actually.
No, I got it. I got it on Blu-ray.
Wow, you've had quite a career in a very short period of time.
Thank you.
You're a young guy and you've done a lot of really cool stuff. Having said that, what do you think the future of mastering holds? It's really difficult for anybody to talk about the future, especially in audio and music production, right?
Yeah.
Really difficult, especially right now where it's such a turning point, I think, with technology. But
yeah.
Where do you feel like things are heading right now? Do you have any kind of insight into that you might be able to share?
I don't want to try to pretend that I have that forecasting power, but I know that humanity has always made music as long as we started. It's been quite a long time, I don't see it stopping.
I had a conversation, we did another podcast a couple days ago with a neuroscientist named Dr. Tim Mullen, and he's a musician and he studies a lot of music in the brain. And one of the questions I asked him was, well, how long we've been, coming from a place of no information, how long have we been listening to music? How long has music been part of the human experience? And he's like, dude, we don't know.
Yeah,
we think like
so
music's been around forever. We think maybe it's even slightly possible animals might have their own versions of it, although he said probably not, but he's like, we don't know.
Birds do it.
Yeah, they dance. Yeah. So
it's vibrating the atmosphere.
Yeah, so having said that, it's hard to say where we're headed, right? I mean, the process of mastering ultimately seems to be a very musical and artistic process, just like mixing or songwriting. Yeah. I think, obviously, that still needs to remain part of the process.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. I went to a conference, I don't know, maybe 2009, and this was pre-Spotify. And it was called the Paradigm Shift. It was at the Naris building. Okay. And everybody was trying to figure out where it was going to, what the next thing was going to be, because the way people bought music the most way was through iTunes. That's the way people were purchasing it, if they didn't steal it illegally. Yeah. And subscription deals were, because Netflix was doing so well at that time. Right. Their stock had risen like threefold or something like that. So it made sense that some type of subscription thing was going to come through. The unfortunate part is that artists aren't getting paid for that. Right. So it's a tricky time. We do a lot of indie records here. We do tons of indie records, and a lot of times I'm just encouraged every day by seeing that artists are doing it for the love of doing the music. Right. And I think hopefully it'll recover and people will be able to make money in the industry again. Right. But when one thing changes, it's almost that the art is coming the real reason that people are making music there's more of a focus on that than trying to make it into a business,
Right.
which is unfortunate in some ways, but also kind of beautiful in other ways. you know?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. At the end of the day, its priority is the art, for sure, and the songwriting and the music. It'd be nice to make a living doing it for sure, but it can't be the other way around.
Yeah.
Cannot be the other way around.
And we're set up in such a
or
way.
you just won't have good music.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, we're all
good.
kind of braving that. We're not sitting here getting rich working on mastering records either. So we're in it too. Like that's kind of because
I wish selfishly, I wish artists made more money, because if artists made more money, then they'd have bigger production budgets, and then I'd make more money. So selfishly, I wish artists made more money. But we're kind of touching onto a much larger conversation here. It's kind of the tip of the iceberg, that conversation.
Yes.
And it's a conversation I like having. I'm not sure we have time for it now at this point, but I'll be talking with Michael Beinhorn on Tuesday, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about the Spotify artists not getting paid
right.
conversation.
Right.
So that'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Is there anything you'd like to talk about on the podcast before we let you go? Because we've kept you hostage in the room here for close to an hour, I think.
Yeah. I don't know that I really. I mean, I'm happy to talk about any topic, really.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if.
Well, we'll have to do this again in the future, because this was really good.
Yeah,
this was really
anytime.
enjoyable, wasn't it, Fredo? Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Fredo?
I've just kind of been blown away looking around at the room and how this whole room is, half of it is brick.
Yeah.
This is a mastering studio, and I would never expect to walk into a mastering studio and see, half the walls just be that reflective. Like,
right.
How did you guys go? Like, who designed this room for you?
We did, and we pulled upon a engineer named Dan Garcia, who really helped us treat it. And I was a teenager with him, and we built these baffles that you see here. We got 1x2s and a saw outside, and we did it. We made bass traps behind the console, all the baffles, got all the material, went down to the fashion district, got that absorbent material, folded it up, stapled it. So it's all custom. And we tuned the room until we were happy and we felt like we could make accurate decisions, until we just had that confidence, and it works for us.
Yeah, I've listened to music in here when you guys had the party, and it sounded amazing. So,
cool.
But again, I'm just kind of looking around and blown away by how well you made it work with what you had.
Yeah, Gavin has a whole lot of knowledge on making sure that bass travels properly in a room, how to eliminate standing waves, how to position speakers properly. And we do it together. When we're auditioning new speakers, we'll get in there and we'll kind of take turns tuning it, because you have to take breaks, maintain your objectivity and all of that. You get it sounding right, leave the room for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, come back in, take another peek, and then enough of that, and then all of a sudden it's right. It's right.
Speaking of taking breaks as well, how often do you find yourself taking a break from a project as a mastering engineer?
It's a really good question. Part of working on records every day, where you've reached your edge. Having that sense is really important. Having the sense of where your head's at as you're working is really important. Just as much as you're balancing the audio, you have to make sure you show up every day able to do it. You know what I mean? So, and everything changes that. How much coffee you drink changes how you hear. So,
oh shit, I'm in trouble.
Hey, I love coffee too. I love coffee, but you're
Does it make it better? I don't know.
Yeah, well, you're sensitive to that, and if you start feeling like you need a break, you should take it. It's for everybody's benefit. But thankfully, these speakers are so smooth that you can be in front of them for a long time and not get fatigued. There's other speakers where I get in front of, I can already feel like my ears are getting fatigued. The ATC is not to, I'll give them a plug too, because they're such great speakers, but I don't feel fatigued when working on them. But the 150s I can sit in front of for hours and my ears aren't fatigued.
Cool. Yeah, I was just interested because it's the amount of precision that goes into this art form. I would imagine that you kind of step out fairly often to kind of reset, but
well, there's advantages to resetting, and then there's disadvantages, because I like to keep my head in the zone. When working on an album, once I'm in it, I like to stay in it, if I can, because I'm there.
Would you say that the room here, like, basically, like, you guys have been in the same rooms now for how long? 10 years?
Yeah.
That has to play a role in it too. Like, if you are so used to how things are supposed to sound in here.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that if we moved, that we'd position where
You'd
we
have to spend a little time to.
Yeah, but we'd be able to get it pretty quick because we know what balanced audio sounds like. We know what our speakers sound like. We know what our gear sounds like. There's already so many constants. Part of mastering is eliminating as many variables as you can.
Yeah.
And that's something else that I like to talk about.
I'm a big fan of that in production too. Actually.
Yeah. Try to and understanding what those variables are. If you can condition yourself to sit in the same part of the room in front of the same speakers, listening at the same level, and the only variable is the music coming in every day, changing.
Right.
Then you've got so much else that's constant that you know what the change, the appropriate changes to make.
Right.
So when people say, hey, what speakers should I use and what kind of gear should I use, you can get so caught up in all these variables that they're introducing, which are important to do, but at the same time, there has to be something to be said about trying to understand what you can keep constant. Really learning speakers means sitting in front of them every day on a routine basis, listening at similar levels on the volume knob, understanding how they react at that level with not changing the furniture in the room and all that kind of thing,
In relation, how loud do you listen?
I listen to a couple different spots. I wouldn't even say an amount necessarily, but there's certain little markings that I put on the volume knob that I know every day that I've been listening for years that way.
So do you go to like one spot and then another spot and not in between? Like you pick a soft and a loud?
That's correct. Yeah. But I like to listen, I like to monitor a little louder, actually, because it allows you to not overcompress. Your ears will naturally compress, so you won't overcompress. Yeah, that's something that Gavin taught me.
That's cool. It's a cool thought. Yeah. I listen pretty quietly because I'm already compressed enough. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. A real pleasure having you take a little time out of your busy schedule to come hang out with me and my pal here, Fredo. And and we'll have to do it again because this was really enjoyable, and you have a ton of knowledge to impart on.
Hey, I had a blast. Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Really, really cool.
It was really exciting and fun.
And what's the website?
That's Gavin's motorcycle. LursenMastering.com.
www. We know LursenMastering.com.
Yep.
And then just hit the contact up if they want to get in touch. What if they want to get in touch with you specifically?
Reuben at LursenMastering.com. We're all our first emails here.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
First name at the email.
Reuben. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you spell your name?
Reuben.
Reuben at Lurssen Mastering.
Nice catch.
Well, then, how do you spell Lurssen?
Lurssen.
Yeah, I have to say that one because that one used to get me a little bit. I used to do 2 R's, 1 S.
It happens.
Lurssen Mastering.com. Thanks a lot, man.
Pleasure, guys. Thanks so much.
That was the end. Back just before I coughed. It fades out.
I'll note here, faded cough.